The year is 2025. A shadow falls over the longest undefended border in the world, casting a pall of uncertainty and fear. The United States, under the leadership of the unpredictable Donald Trump, sets its sights on a northern prize, Canada. His ambitions are as grand as they are dangerous. It began with whispers, dismissed as jokes. Conversations in corridors, laughter in offices, all masking a growing tension. Trump, with his characteristic bluster, declared his desire to annex Canada to make it the 51st state. His words were met with a mix of disbelief and alarm. He called Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Governor Trudeau, a mocking title that dripped with disdain, undermining the sovereignty of a neighboring nation. These were not mere words, they were threats, backed by action, and the world took notice. They were threats, backed by action. Military maneuvers and strategic deployments signaled a readiness for conflict. Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum slammed into the Canadian economy, causing ripples of economic distress. Border treaties were questioned, their validity cast in doubt. Legal frameworks that once seemed unshakable now appeared fragile. Trump's rhetoric, once laughed at, began to feel like a prelude to something far more sinister. The world watched with bated breath. The world watched, holding its breath as a storm gathered on the horizon. The tension was palpable. The world remembers Trump's previous actions, his volatile nature. His decisions had always been unpredictable, his disregard for international norms. Treaties and agreements were mere obstacles to his vision of American supremacy, his belief in American dominance above all else, a belief that now threatened to destabilize an entire continent. The possibility of a US-Canada war, once unthinkable, now loomed large, a terrifying prospect in a world already grappling with instability and uncertainty. The stakes had never been higher. This was not a game. The pieces on the board were real, and the consequences could be catastrophic. This was a threat to the very fabric of North America. Families watched in fear, wondering what the future held. The question was no longer if, but when. Time seemed to be running out. And as the drums of war beat louder, one question echoed across the globe. Could Canada, a nation known for its peace-loving nature, stand against the might of its southern neighbor? The world waited for an answer. The answer, like the future itself, remained shrouded in uncertainty. The fog of war had descended, and no one could predict what lay ahead. Trump's weapon of choice was not missiles or tanks, but something more insidious: economic warfare. He believed that by crippling Canada's economy, he could force it to its knees, making it ripe for a takeover. Tariffs, those age-old tools of economic aggression, were his weapon of choice. Canadian steel and aluminum, once flowing freely across the border, were met with hefty taxes, making them prohibitively expensive. The impact was immediate and devastating for many. Canadian businesses, heavily reliant on trade with the US, struggled to stay afloat. Unemployment rose and the Canadian dollar plummeted in value. The once robust economy began to sputter, weakened by the relentless assault. Canada did not take this lying down. Retaliatory tariffs on US goods were swift and targeted, striking at the heart of Trump's support base. American farmers, already reeling from previous trade wars, found their markets in Canada drying up. The economic pain, once confined to the north, began to seep across the border, fueling resentment and unrest. The economic battle raged on, a prelude to a conflict that threatened to consume the entire continent. Each side, locked in a deadly embrace, refused to back down. The world watched in horror as two of its most prosperous nations, once beacons of democracy and cooperation, descended into a spiral of economic self-destruction. Canada, facing an existential threat, found itself at a crossroads. The nation was grappling with a challenge that would test its very core and identity. The nation, known for its politeness and love of hockey, now stared into the abyss of war. The peaceful streets and friendly faces masked a growing tension. Could it stand up to the United States, a superpower with a military budget larger than the next 10 countries combined? The odds seemed insurmountable. The answer, resounding and defiant, was a resounding yes. Canadians were ready to face the challenge head-on with unwavering determination. Across the vast expanse of Canada, from the bustling cities of the east to the rugged wilderness of the west, a spirit of defiance arose. The unity was palpable. Canadians, regardless of their political affiliations, rallied around the maple leaf. They stood together, united by a common cause. They understood that this was not just about tariffs or borders. It was a matter of national pride and identity. It was about their sovereignty, their right to exist as a free and independent nation. The stakes had never been higher. The political landscape shifted dramatically. Leaders who once seemed divided found common ground. Justin Trudeau, once criticized for his perceived weakness, transformed into a wartime leader, his voice a beacon of strength and determination. His leadership was now unquestionable. He rallied his people, reminding them of their shared history, their values, and their unwavering belief in peace. His words resonated deeply, but he also made it clear that peace without freedom was no peace at all. The message was clear and powerful. Canada would defend itself, not with aggression, but with the same unwavering resolve it had shown throughout its history. The nation's spirit was unbreakable. The Canadian Armed Forces, though smaller than their American counterparts, were highly trained and well-equipped. Their readiness was unquestionable. More importantly, they were fighting for their homeland, their families, and their way of life. Their motivation was deeply personal. The world watched in awe as Canada, a nation that had often been underestimated, prepared to defend itself against an unprecedented threat. The global community held its breath. The spectre of a US-Canada war sent shockwaves across the globe, causing widespread panic and uncertainty. Alliances were tested, loyalties questioned, and the international community found itself on the brink of a new Cold War. Diplomatic channels buzzed with urgent communications as nations scrambled to reassess their positions. The United States, once seen as a guarantor of global security, was now viewed with suspicion and distrust. Its actions had cast a long shadow over its reputation. Trump's aggressive rhetoric and disregard for international law had alienated many of America's closest allies. Protests erupted worldwide, condemning the US stance. The European Union, long a trading partner and strategic ally, condemned the US actions, warning of dire consequences for the global economy. Financial markets reacted with volatility, reflecting the uncertainty. NATO, the cornerstone of Western defense for decades, was thrown into disarray. Internal debates raged over the alliance's future direction. The alliance, formed to counter Soviet aggression, now faced an internal crisis that threatened to tear it apart. The very fabric of NATO was at risk. Many member states, bound by treaty obligations to defend Canada, found themselves caught between their commitment to collective security and their reluctance to engage in a conflict with the United States. The dilemma was profound and unprecedented. Russia, eager to exploit any division within the Western alliance, watched the unfolding crisis with a mixture of amusement and opportunism. The Kremlin saw potential gains in the West's discord. China, too, saw an opportunity to advance its own interests, offering economic lifelines to Canada and positioning itself as a mediator in the conflict. Beijing's strategic moves were calculated and deliberate. The world, once defined by a bipolar power dynamic, was now a multipolar chessboard, with each player vying for advantage in a high-stakes game of geopolitical strategy. The stakes had never been higher, and the future was uncertain. Let's dive into the military capabilities of the nations involved. First off, we have the sheer number of personnel. It's staggering, really, just how many are ready for deployment at a moment's notice. Next, the technology. Advanced weaponry and state-of-the-art equipment play a crucial role in modern warfare. And finally, the strategy. Each nation has meticulously planned their moves, anticipating every possible scenario. It's a complex and high-stakes game of chess where every decision could alter the course of history. In the short term, conflict would likely lead to immediate disruptions in trade, travel, and daily life. Essential services could be strained and the economic impact would be felt almost instantly. However, if the conflict were to be prolonged, the consequences would be far more severe. Prolonged warfare could lead to significant loss of life, long-term economic downturns, and lasting damage to infrastructure. The social fabric of both nations could be irreparably torn, making recovery a daunting task. The long-term consequences of a war between the US and Canada would extend well beyond the battlefield. Economically, both countries would face years, if not decades, of rebuilding. Socially, the impact on families and communities could be devastating. Politically, the conflict could alter the global balance of power, with other nations stepping in to fill the void left by two weakened North American giants. The environment could also suffer, with potential damage to natural resources and ecosystems that could take generations to heal. Despite the grim prospects of conflict, there's always hope for peace. Diplomacy offers a path away from destruction, fostering dialogue over discord. International organizations and neighboring countries could play crucial roles in mediating tensions, encouraging both sides to find common ground. By prioritizing diplomatic efforts, the US and Canada could avoid the catastrophic consequences of war, ensuring a future where cooperation and mutual respect prevail. Looking ahead, the future of US-Canada relations hinges on the choices made today. Both nations have much to gain from a relationship built on trust, cooperation, and mutual benefit. By addressing current issues through diplomatic channels and fostering a spirit of collaboration, the US and Canada can set a positive example for the world. The path forward may be challenging, but with a commitment to peace and partnership, a brighter future is within reach. This is a video by the Millenium Studios.